All right, thank you for having me. My name's John Miller. It's a real privilege to be here with you guys. I'm going to tell my story, and then I'm going to end up sharing a little bit of tools of some stuff that I've learned, and I really just hope that God blesses you. But I want to start by telling you a story, and there's a lot of stories that are in my head, so I hope the appropriate ones all come out. But Jesus tells a story. And I am deeply in love with Jesus because he has met me in a lot of pain. And Jesus tells a story about a man. He's sitting at a temple and he's watching a very religious person go up and make a prayer. So this super picture like somebody that you really respect as a religious leader. And this guy goes up to pray this awesome prayer. And then behind that man is a tax collector who betrayed the Jewish people, who robbed from his own people. He is a very messy person. And Jesus looks at that tax collector and he says, that right there is somebody that's after my heart. Not that clean person that thinks he's okay, but that other person that couldn't even raise his eyes to God. He was so ashamed he didn't want to show up. And God says, that's my guy. So here's my encouragement to you before I get going, is it's hard to show up and be the messy person, right? It's really hard, and especially in a church of really clean people, and you feel like you're the messy one, the dirty one, right? When I spoke at church, so I'm going to talk about addictions, unwanted sexual behavior, right? That's my problem, right? And specifically addictions to porn and masturbation. That is my story. And how can I stop doing something why do I keep doing the thing that I don't want to do anymore? What is wrong with me that my faith and my actions are in conflict? That's my story, right? So I was sharing my story. And of 2,000 people, right, let's say half of them are guys. Statistically, 80% of them are looking at pornography and acting out on a regular basis, right? So that's 800 men. After I spoke, 800 men needed to listen to what I was saying, and 13 emailed me saying, can I get help? And of those 13, 4 showed up. 4 people showed up. And you know what? God was in the room when those 4 people showed up. This one guy came in, I love him, man, because he's like this real Harley-looking guy, right? Like real rough-looking. I was like, okay, good. This is the right guy. And he came in, he was shaken because he was so embarrassed. Ashamed, and he had overcome so many addiction in his life. He's 72, and he can't get rid of this last unwanted sexual behavior. And he says, I've overcome everything. I've been in jail. I've been through everything, and I don't know how to stop this thing. And by the end of our time, he went from shaking to like relaxed and ready to fight. Isn't that awesome? So I'm going to share my story. I'm going to give you some stuff. You guys are allowed to interrupt me any way you want. But I'm going to start with this quote by Kanye West. I don't care if you like Kanye West or not. I'm not asking if you like it. But Kanye West said this, and this took a whole lot of courage to say this statement. He said, Playboy was my gateway into a full-on pornography addiction. My dad had a Playboy left out at the age of 5, and it's affected almost every choice I've made for the rest of my life from age 5 to now, trying to kick the habit. Kanye West told that to Rolling Stone magazine. And that, I mean, it's crazy, right? So even when I read that, I was like, the devil's going after this guy, right? As soon as he said that statement. So that is my story. That's me up there. So this next slide, you'll see me at 14. I tried to find a better picture of me at 14. I really did not want to show this specific picture, but I couldn't find a better picture. I mean, I was one awkward kid. So we can like really take this apart if we want to. But that's me. So let me tell you what happened when I was 14. When I was 14, I was taking a shower, and I discovered how to masturbate, and I had no clue about it. I had no clue what happened. And I kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it. And then my neighborhood friends introduced me to pornography. So there was a video in one of our friends' basement, and they showed that video. And there was what I now know as a dopamine hit that I'd never felt before. And man, it felt good. And I wanted it again, and I wanted it again, and I wanted it again. And that happened for a couple of months. And after a couple of months, I knew that my faith was in conflict. So one thing I want you guys to really, really understand, and what I spoke about at my church, is I love Jesus Christ. I always have loved Jesus Christ. My faith has been so important to me, no one can take that away from me. So the summer I was 14, two things happened. One, I became a follower of Jesus, and it was real. It wasn't fake, it was real. So that was a beautiful transition that happened in my life. But this is the second thing that happened in that summer. And what I learned is that Satan, evil, I like to say evil a lot, right? Because if we say Satan, I think sometimes we think like we try to personify it or make this cartoon character in my head. But man, evil is intense, man. And evil has been after me. Evil said to me, John, you could follow Jesus, but we're just going to make you impotent. We're going to make you so full of shame, you do nothing with your life. You don't speak up, you don't go out, and you just feel so bad about yourself that you become a worthless follower of Jesus. That's what evil wanted in my story. So I was 14, I became a follower of Jesus. And that same summer, I was introduced to pornography and masturbation. So you know what I did? That summer, this boy right up here, he went to his youth pastor. And I said, I need help. And my youth pastor, he did not help. He turned me away. He said, go talk to your dad. Now, I have lots of reasons why I think maybe that happened, but I don't know. He said, go talk to your dad. So I remember the car pulling up. I could take you exactly where I stood. And I go out of my church. I had a beautiful church. We love Jesus. And my dad pulls up. I get in the car. And I said, Dad, I'm having a hard time. What did I say? I said, Dad, I'm having a hard time with jerking off. And he said, well, what's that? And I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to explain this. And so I had this freak out moment. And I began explaining it. And my dad, my dad is the only man on planet Earth that had never done that. So he had no clue how to respond to me. And so I felt stupid, I felt shamed, and I learned in that moment, don't talk to people and don't talk to adults. They're not going to know, especially in the church. You just got to keep this down. So I kept it hidden, I kept it buried, and I went down, down, and down, and down. So next slide is I think I'm 36 in this picture. All right, because you guys are going through the chips. I think if you went one more year, I would have raised my hand. I'm not sure. So I have a good friend that I went to Calvin College with, and I opened up to him with everything, and he was like the guy that I talked to, but it wasn't really helping. You have a lot of those friends? Like this guy, I opened up a lot to him, and I said to him, his name's Tim, and I said, Tim, if I don't make a change, this is 36 years. I've been talking to you this for almost 20 years. And I haven't made any progress. So my next 20 years are going to look like my last 20 years unless something crazy happens, unless I do something radical. At that same time, I'm a big U2 fan, and this album came out called Songs of Innocence. And this quote up here has this picture, and I don't know if you guys have ever surfed before, but if you do surf, if you look at the waves, if you see the surfers, when they go out, you know where the waves break and they turn white? Surfers go past those waves, right? And they wait past there, and they wait for the big ones, and they ride the big ones in. But they don't stay where the waves break. This song is about people who are stuck in a problem, and they're staying where the waves are breaking. And you don't know why you're staying in that spot, but your waves are crashing on you. They're crashing on you. They're crashing on you. So he says, are we so helpless against the tide? Baby, every dog on the street knows that we're in love with defeat. Are we ready to be swept off our feet and stop chasing every breaking wave? And here I was, in love with defeat. Like, why can't I let go of this thing? Am I ready to be swept off my feet? Like, my faith knows that God has something great for me. I have all these great stories around me. Why isn't it my story? And why can't I just stay? Why can't I leave these breakers? But I'm staying and getting crashed and crashed and crashed in these waves. So that same summer, I went surfing. So this next page, so Tim and I went surfing. These are our boards. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see what happened as a result. That's how good I am. That's my feet, right, sticking out. Yeah, I'm pretty horrific. Apparently it takes a lot of muscles that I don't have. But when I was on this journey, this was me, right? This was me trying to defeat stuff that I couldn't get rid of on my own. This is what it felt like, all right? So somebody asked me the question, and they said, John, what mountain are you climbing? And man, that was a really, really good question. And I said, well, help me understand, like, what the heck are you talking about? So I'm going to show you this next slide of two different mountains. The mountain on the left is Mount Everest. That's a really big mountain, the world's tallest mountain, standing at 29,029 feet. Then you've got Mount Pocono. Anybody in here been to Mount Pocono? It's right around the corner. You can climb it in the afternoon if you want. All you need is like some sneakers and a backpack, and you can walk up to the top, right? Not a big deal. So you can go to the top. So what somebody told me, now this person had nothing to do with addictions, nothing to do with helping me. They had a lot to do with helping me myself as a mentor. But it's not something that they knew. They just said, John, when I look at your life, I see you trying to climb. You think you're climbing Mount Pocono, but you're not, man. The reason you keep falling is this thing is way bigger, and you have no clue what you're doing. So you keep trying to climb, like trying to defeat this thing, but you keep falling down and falling down. Like, you realize that climbing Mount Everest is so much more difficult than climbing Mount Pocono. You don't have the right gear. You don't have the right people taking you. You have no idea what you're doing. That's why Celebrate Recovery is so important. You can't be on your own. You don't have the resources. I didn't have the resources. I would have gone to Celebrate Recovery if I knew it existed. But even at that point, I didn't even know it existed. So they said, you've got to find a way to climb Mount Everest. And that's what you need to do. So here's what I learned. Statistically, if you are fighting an addiction, okay? My addiction, your addiction, and please, we can't compare addictions, right? We can't do that. What I'm talking about is something in your life that you're dying to not have to be part of your life. You don't know how to stop. You want to stop. You don't know why you're not stopping, but you want to let go of this thing, right? You need to let go of this thing. So it takes 2 to 5 years to break an addiction, statistically, if you're really, really, really fighting. I mean, think about all the things in your heart that's got to change. Your mind. So here's some reasons why I'm saying 2 to 5 years. So 2 to 5 years to stop any kind of addiction. Then your brain needs time to change. We wire our brains. We have rewired our brains. And then Jesus says, shut down that pathway and trust me as I open up a new pathway. And you know what that's going to mean? You can't sleep. It means you're going to be irritable. You're going to be angry. You're going to go through all these different emotions as God rewires you. But that is where you learn. And that death and resurrection is where Jesus comes alive in our lives. So your brain needs time to change. 3, your emotions need time to change. I mean, it's embarrassing to admit, but if I had a bad day, I would prepare for my bad day by looking at porn and jerking off. Somehow, in my brain, that was a way that I was going to make life work that day. It makes no sense to say out loud. It is embarrassing to say out loud, but it's the truth. That was it. And I had to learn how to face things that I didn't know how to face. I had to have conversations that I didn't know how to have conversations to. Then last is that your heart needs time to change. Like, we want what we want. So how is it that my heart actually changed in what it desires? So these things take a long time. So what did my journey look like? My specific journey was I asked my best friend Tim to partner with me. I said, man, I just really, really need some help here. And he said, great, I'll help you. But I have no idea what I'm doing other than I'm going to be a really good friend. And here I am. So what do you want me to do? I said, I don't know, man. So next is that I also included my dad. He's the white-haired guy in the middle. So he's a great man. He loves Jesus. But guess what? He's also totally clueless how to help me. But he said, I love you, so I will also help you. I'm like, okay, great. So far I have 2 people who are really helpful, and none of them know what they're doing. All right, so then finally, this last one is this guy in the middle is my psychotherapist. It was crazy. I couldn't even believe I had to sign up. Like, I was paying for a psychotherapist. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm crazy. That's what crazy people do. I'm not crazy. So, but that's what I did. I paid a psychotherapist that specialized in sex addiction. I didn't know what to do. I had no clue what to do. And so that's my wife on the far right, and that's him in the middle. We took this after about 3 years of counseling I went through. So after 4 years, I was able to say goodbye to unwanted sexual behavior. 4 years. Man, and I go back. I talk to I work with so many guys now, and I love it. And they say, like, why are you so patient? And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, I was paying like I don't know, 150, 200 bucks, I don't remember, each session. And I did no work for the first 8 months. I mean, do the math on how much that cost me. Like, I'm paying money and I'm not even doing any of the work. It took me so long. I remember at one point we were sitting down and he said to me, John, are you going to let me drive this car? Or are you just going to come in here and keep trying to drive? And I was like, oh, man. It's like, I don't want to let you drive. I don't know where you're going to take me. Like, I was so humbling. So after 4 years, I was able to say goodbye to unwanted sexual behavior. And I want to run with you guys. There's so much I can unpack and talk to you guys. So I picked like my greatest, there's so many greatest hits to show you guys. Like, I just have so many resources that I didn't know existed out there. And it broke my heart. Like, as a Christian man, I needed these things. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of resources. You can invite me back anytime for a bunch more resources. Right? I've got plenty of them. So this first one I want to show you is something I handed out. And it's really, really important because I think that this document is called Stages of Change. And the reason why, so I want you guys to follow along with this for two reasons. One is I'm about to speak to you from a very specific perspective. And you might get lost in what I'm saying. And depending on where you are in wanting to change, you might not like what I have to say, right? And so that's okay. It just means that you're at a different spot. So I'm going to tell you where I'm coming from. I think that's a big deal. But then also, even bigger is for you to look at this and ask yourself, where are you in the stages of change? So I'm going to walk through these really, really quickly. My point isn't to teach you about all these, but my point is just to go through these one at a time. And I would like to have you in the back of your head, where are you? So, pre-contemplation, this is the first one, okay? Pre-contemplation is you're not even thinking about changing, okay? So here's some good news. If you're in here, you're not at pre-contemplation because you're in this room, right? So, but we've already probably all been at a spot where pre-contemplation was like you're not even thinking about changing. People might be telling you you need to change, but you're not even thinking about it. And also another way to look at this chart that I'm saying to you is that change could be overwhelming, right? And since it's overwhelming, I think Jesus sits with you where you're at. That's what he did with me. And he doesn't tell you, you need to be 6 stages ahead of where you are right now. He stays with you. If you're at pre-contemplation and I meet someone who's at pre-contemplation, guess how I talk to them? I talk to them as if they're there, and that's where I meet them. And my only goal is to get them to wondering about change is the next stage. So the next stage will be contemplation. This is where you're thinking about changing, but you're not really going to do anything. But you are actively thinking about it. So that's the Spirit moving, right? That you're aware something exists and you want to make a change. You're thinking about making a change. You know that you should make a change, but you're afraid of making a change. Then the next stage is preparation. So that's like you're maybe taking the beginning steps of maybe attending a group like this. You know that something needs to happen, so you're starting to take some baby steps, but you're not really changing your behavior yet, right? So, and then the next one would be action. So action is where you are actively working, trying to get rid of your unwanted addiction. So action. And then maintenance is like, hey, I have, like, that's what these chips are all about, is maintenance, right? That it's like, I've been sober for this amount of period of time, and what do I need to do to keep that sobriety going? And then the last one is this place of renewed dignity, where I believe, as followers of Jesus, you guys ever hear the statement, hurt people, right? Man, do I know that one, right? But, you know, the Jesus version of that is bless people, right? That's what we do. So I don't think, here's what's crazy, right? You guys, because we're all together, right? We saw ourselves as the dirtiest, grossest, like the misfits of the church. That's where Jesus is, right? And if you guys can understand and defeat your addiction, you are the leaders of the church. This room is the leaders of the church. God uses the broken people to change the world. He doesn't use the people who are all together and got it all worked up. He doesn't use those people. He uses the broken people. Those are the people that he shines through. So it's not enough just to change. It's that you need to now bless people. All right, so now you look like I skipped this one in the middle. This one's called relapse. Let me tell you why relapse is important and why I call it like a stage. If you keep falling back in and you keep falling back in and you keep falling back in, the problem is that you're telling me that you're in action, right? And you say, I'm doing this, man. I'm going to go home and I'm going to do this right, man. I'm going to do everything you told me to do. And then you relapse. And then you relapse. And then you relapse. So it's not just something that happens. It's a stage that you're in. And Jesus wants to meet you in that stage. And what you need to do is figure out what is going on in my heart, because I'm telling everybody that I'm in action, and maybe I actually don't want to change. Maybe what's happening is I'm actually in contemplation, and I'm struggling to even know if I really want to do this. And I'm torn between these two worlds. And Jesus will meet you in there. I mean, relapse is actually a beautiful place to ask the right questions. Isn't that awesome? So here's where I'm talking to you tonight. I'm talking to you at this bottom one, action. So if you don't like what I'm saying, if it feels bad, I get it, right? But it just means that you're at a different spot. Does that make sense? All right, so now, here's the first tool I want to show you. And this is awesome. Okay, I even said, Holly, have you seen this before? And she said, yeah, I think I saw it in rehab. So this stuff is out there on the internet. Okay, what I've done is I put Jesus in it. Okay, that's the big difference. Okay, so now this is the addictive cycle. And I'm going to explain this addictive cycle to you. All right, and we all work the same way, no matter what your addiction is. All right, so for me, right, it's the preoccupation. I could be at the gym and see somebody that I think is beautiful, and a seed gets planted in my head that I know I'm going to use the next day, right? So pre-contemplation is when you start thinking. You haven't done anything yet, but you start thinking, oh man, when I leave Celebrate Recovery, man, I'm going to drive by that place, and I'm going to get a couple drinks. I can do that. So your brain starts going through. You haven't done anything yet, but you start thinking through and making a plan. You know what I'm saying? So, and then ritual, all right, is everybody in this room has a ritual. Everybody. So if you wrote down, where do you shop? What's your addiction? Where do you go? When I look at porn, 90% of the time, it's in the exact same place in the exact same way. So all of us have a ritual that we do. And once you start going into that ritual, guess what? You're gone. You're gone. I mean, an earthquake can happen, and God can certainly do something crazy. But apart from something nuts happening, you're gonna act out. There's nothing stopping you at that point, okay? So acting out is the last thing. So that's when you do that thing that you didn't want to do. And then following that is despair, where you can't stand yourself. And you say, what the heck is going on? Who am I? Why did I do this? I'm a piece of, whatever. This is just, I'm never going to change. Which sets you up for preoccupation all over again. So evil has two different lies here. Remember, I talk about evil a lot, guys. So evil's first lie says to you, your needs won't be met. No one really cares. Today's been a hard day. You deserve this. It'll make you feel better. God's going to forgive you anyway. Acting out will relieve so much pressure, and it will feel so good. You guys relate to that? It's so easy to write this curriculum when you're the guy that really struggled with it, right? So that's what evil says to you to get you going in. But then, once you act out, right, on the other side of acting out, evil says, look at you, you're so pathetic. This proves that no one really loves you. You are alone. You're bad. You can never change. God is ashamed of you. Your friends would be ashamed of you if they know this truth. Just hide it and don't talk about it. You guys relate to that? So now, look at this. This is really, really beautiful. All right, so I have a lot of groups of guys, and we all struggle with porn, masturbation, all sorts of unwanted sexual stuff. That's what I focus on. And I tell them that we don't do accountability. Let me tell you why I don't do accountability. Because that just means it's going to be a bunch of people in a room lying at each other. I hate it. So it's going to be, hey, who acted out this week? And they all kind of look down like, oh, I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know. or if they acted out 10 times, they'll tell me 2. It's a waste of my time. Don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. Forget it. So what we do is something called lifelines. And there's 2 places to send lifelines. And they're really embarrassing at first. And then they become amazing. So lifelines are after you've acted out. right after you've acted out. If you have a drinking problem, and I want you sending a text to everybody that's in your group with that drink in your hand, asking Jesus to forgive you, right? Because the biggest thing, guys, is that we forget that Jesus loved us. Like every single one of us have a problem, and that problem is when you look in the mirror, you don't like what you see. And I don't like what I see. Because when I was a kid, man, evil, Psalm 139 says, Jesus made me unique and amazing. There's nothing, I don't care what you think when you look at this person up here, that Jesus made every hair on my head. This mole right here, I was looking at, had some hairs growing out of it this morning. He made it. He put it there. I don't necessarily know why he put it there, but he did. So, but yet when we look in the mirror, we don't like what we see. And evil has been after every single person in this room since before you were born to destroy everything that God was going to do. Because if you embraced God's identity in you, you could change the world. But if evil can kill you, then you'll just be afraid of your own reflection. And I hated who I was. And I didn't really believe that when I was in my counseling. I was like, I don't think so. And I was brushing my teeth one day, and I realized I don't look at myself in the eyes. I don't like looking at myself in the eyes. And I tried. I'm brushing my teeth, trying to look at myself in the eyes. I mean, I don't like this. And so I stopped. So you could say whatever you want to say about yourself, but I'm telling you that evil has planted a seed in your mind that you're bad. Nobody loves you. Your needs won't be met. So therefore, you might as well just take care of yourself. And the first lifeline is saying that Jesus is right there in that mess, and he's not embarrassed. He's not afraid of who he made. He wants you to reach out and say, help. So one guy said to me, we were in a group, right? And he said to me, I hate sending lifelines right after I've acted out. It's so embarrassing. And I said, okay, great. And I make them text their prayers. You know why I make them text their prayers? Because they'll say things like, I'm praying right now. Really? You're for real? You're praying? I want to know what you're praying. Because it's probably, if you're praying, it's probably pretty lame. Right? And then they text out their prayers and they learn how to pray. And this one guy said to me, I hate it. I feel like I'm slapping God every time I ask for forgiveness. I said, let me tell you a story. So let's say that I'm a dad, right? And I've got 2 kids. So let's say that they slap me all the time. Like they just wake up and they're angry and they hit me all the time. And they never say sorry. And I'm used to it. Every day I get up and my kids abuse me. I cry. I'm broken. I go see people about it. I'm like broken. And then what happens if one day my daughter wakes up and she says, Daddy, I don't know why I hit you. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. And then she hits me and says, will you forgive me? Can you help me? Man, everything that's in me as a dad is like bubbling. Absolutely, I love you. There's nothing you can do to change that. That is how Jesus sees you and me. And that's why we pray. Because you don't believe it. You are God's adopted son. You're God's adopted daughter. He would do anything for you. And you got to believe it. So we text again and again and again and again. These verses up here, this is a voice. This is said twice to Jesus. 2 times Jesus hears this exact same thing. The first time Jesus hears it is he's baptized. And when he comes out, so God from heaven speaks and everybody hears it. How crazy is that, right? This is like Moses stuff, right? So Jesus gets baptized. When he comes out, God says to Jesus, you are my son. I love you, and in you I'm well pleased. How amazing is that? You know the second time Jesus hears the same exact words? Does anybody know? The what? Yeah, rewind a month. So about a month before that, Jesus is preparing for the garden. And he goes to the Mount of Transfiguration where Moses and Elijah show up. I mean, it's totally nuts. He's on the mountaintop, and Moses and Elijah show up. And do you know what they talk to him about? Him dying. They're like, Jesus, you are going to die. The whole weight of the world, all the weight that we feel in this room, Jesus died for the whole weight of the whole world. It's going to crush him. And he's scared. And you know what God says? It's a great verse. It says, it says, while Peter was still talking, because he's like freaking nervous, right? He's just like chattering and doesn't know what to say. And he's talking, says, while Peter was still talking, a voice from heaven says, and not to Jesus, but he turns to the people around him and says, "This is my son, whom I love, with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him." And when I wake up, I have a prayer card every day with this verse on it because I don't believe it. You know what's going to happen? Is that right when I'm done talking to you, I'll get in my Jeep and evil's going to whisper something. "John, you messed up. I don't know, not enough people were there. Too many people were there. This didn't happen. You did this or didn't say this. You forgot this person's name or whatever." Evil's going to work its way into my little head, right? And it's going to be the opposite of that. And every morning I rewrite my heart with these words that God looks at me and says, "You are my son, whom I love, with you I'm well pleased." Every single person in this room, believe it or not, Jesus looks at you and says, "You are my son. I am well pleased with you. I love you." Isn't that amazing? Then you're like, "Oh, okay, I'll give this a shot today." So that's the first time we spend a lifeline. And the only point of that lifeline is to stop despair. Right? Because that's no good place to go. It's only going to make this whirlpool spin and spin and spin and spin. The second place we send a lifeline is up here, right in preoccupation. And now this is really, really, really hard, right? Because this is where you start really hurting. This is where it starts. The suffering really picks up. Because you say you have to text your friends. Not in an accountability a week later. This is in the moment. And you say, right now, in this moment, this is what I'm feeling. And right now, in this moment, this is what I want to do. Jesus, please help me. Right? And you know what the point of our groups are? Is to ask each other questions. Okay? Because let me tell you something. Evil's stupid. Right? It's been doing the same thing for thousands of years. If you don't believe me, just open up the Old Testament. They are really screwed up back there. And they're screwed up with the same stuff that we're screwed up with. Right? Evil's doing the exact same thing. It's really dumb. So all you have to do is turn and face evil. I'm not recommending this. There's a TV show on, oh man, I totally forget the name. Anyway, they're going after a drug cartel. I forget the name. They're going, and it's who's the people that go after the from the government that go after drugs? I don't know. DEA, okay, right. The DEA is going after. So they're going after this cartel, right? And this guy's he's dedicated his whole life to killing this guy, to getting this guy. And everything about him, he's killed thousands and thousands of people. There's so much destruction. And he closes in on them, and he's hiding. He's this fat little thing hiding in a corner of a roof. And he was he thought he was going up against a monster. And he finally saw the monster, and it's this shaking little thing. And he's like, oh. It was just this. And I looked at it and said, that's how my fight against evil's been. I've been so afraid of evil my whole life. So afraid of addiction. So afraid of this person that I thought I was becoming. And I have to stop and ask questions. So I turn to evil and I ask it questions. And guess what? Evil hates questions. It hates it. It doesn't know how to answer them. So look at these slides. This is what I picture. So I made this up in my head, right? I Googled crazy big monster over the whole horizon, and I got that thing, right? And then I also Googled person standing with their back to me, right? So that's how I got that picture. So this picture right here is how I feel, right? When I'm overwhelmed and I want to act out, right? And it's all I can see, and I don't know how I'm going to get through it. But Jesus is next to me, and he wants me to ask questions. And when I ask questions, this is what starts to happen. If you go to the next slide, it starts to fade, right? And you could start seeing the green grass and the blue sky in front of you. You can start looking at reality instead of your distorted reality. And you can start, so you keep asking, and you keep asking, and you keep asking questions. Why, evil, are you here? Why now? What is it about my day that you think that you're going to solve? And then finally, after you start asking questions enough, evil turns into plankton. Right? And then you're like, oh, this is what you think you're going to solve this in my life? That is totally stupid. And then, what does plankton do? He just kind of scurries off. And I'm not even afraid of it anymore. I'm not. And I'm not trying to say that I'm like some kind of superhero, but Jesus does change us. I don't know how to explain it. So we fostered, this is a good story. We fostered a girl, a really, great girl, and really, really, really kind. It was a, very hard situation. And we own a Dairy Queen. And I was interviewing one of her friends. And, and this is, just a couple years ago. I'm just a new man now, right? And her friends didn't like me. And they said to my foster daughter, he was checking out our butts the whole time and as we were walking out, right? And you know what she said? She said, he's a godly man, and he doesn't do that kind of stuff. And he speaks against that kind of stuff all the time. You're wrong. That wasn't me. That was Jesus in me. You know what I mean? Like, there was a time where that statement might have been true. And it could have been, but that's not me anymore. Jesus has done a new thing, a new work. And evil turns into the little plankton that has nothing to do. So look at this next verse up here. What did I learn? Look at this verse from Genesis 16. I mean, there's so much to talk about. One of my greatest verses in the Bible. This is it. So do you guys know the story of Hagar? It's a sad story, man. Abraham's a great man, but he's also a total jerk, right? So in this part, God said, I'm going to make you a great nation. You're going to be amazing. I'm going to change the whole world. I'm going to have this huge people are going to come from you. And it didn't happen. And so Abraham waited, and he waited, and he waited, and he waited, and it didn't happen. So he did what weird people like us do. He said, okay, I'm going to help God out. I'm going to give him some assistance. So him and his wife, Sarai, said, how about you have sex with Hagar? And you can have a child with her. And he said, okay, let's help God out. So they did that, and they had Ishmael. And then after that Sarai says that in the Bible, God's word says she treated Hagar terribly. I mean, I don't know what she did to Hagar. Definitely verbally abused her. It was horrible, some horrible stuff. And at the end, she says to Hagar, "Go, leave, take your kid, and get out of here." So they go in the desert, and they're going to die. I mean, it's such a sad story. And then you know what? God meets her in the desert. This Hagar, she's just like alone, gonna die. She's with her son. What am I gonna do? I personally believe it was Jesus that went to her, right? But an angel of the Lord, right? I say it's Jesus, but an angel of the Lord came to her, and he said to her two questions: where have you come from, and where are you going? Can you think of two more beautiful questions to ask yourself when evil's chasing you? What's your story? How did you get here? It didn't happen overnight. Where did you come from? Because tell me about your story. That's a really significant part of why you struggle with what you struggle with. And where are you going? So can we turn and become someone different? Can I stop this legacy in my family of everybody doing the same stuff? Can we be different? So where have I come from and where am I going? And then we're different. What was it? 4 years later, I'm at Sandy Cove with my friend Tim. And this is us right here. Jesus never fails. And I can't believe that I get to say that I don't even remember when I stopped acting out. I don't have a clue. I just know it stopped. One day was my last. And so Tim and I got together to pray, and I couldn't believe I'm just a different person. And it was actually as a result of that, I said, man, I have to tell people what God did. So we, back to the surfing picture, we did not go back out again. My surfboard has still been unused. But there's another song I wanted to show you, and I'm a big YouTube fan. And this song is Red Flag Day. So it's a sister song, the other song I read to you. So the other song was like being tossed by the waves, right? And this one is like when the waves are rough, when they're crazy, man, baby, it's a red flag day. Let's get in the water, taken out by a wave where I've never been before. It's a red flag day. Let's go a bit further. Paradise is a place you can see what is yours. So this whole idea that this thing I was afraid of actually became the very thing that I love to talk about the most. Right? So it's like this thing that we hide. Jesus is saying, no, that's the very thing that I'm going to shine myself through. So this is the thing that I'm going to use. So here I am, afraid of all this time on the water, and now I'm like, woo, let's go. And that's what God does. And God is transforming guys left and right. Man, it's awesome. And you know what's really great about it is I know me. I know my story. It's not me. I'm not changing anybody. This is Jesus Christ who's changing people. And there's a lot of people. Some people, they don't make it. Like what we call it climbing Mount Everest. There's a lot of people that don't make it to the top because they don't want to do the work. It's really hard. But there's a lot of people that get to the top, and they're different. And they're not the same anymore. What about you? Here's my last quote for you. This is by a great guy named Rick Warren. Other people are going to find healing in your wounds. So it's like, I mean, it's crazy to think about what you think. I don't know what you think about yourself listening to me right now. I don't know how you see yourself. Right? But I know what Jesus sees. I know that Jesus doesn't regret a single inch of how he made you. And he wants to redeem every part. So other people are going to find healing in your wounds. Your greatest life messages and your most effective ministry will come out of your deepest hurts. I'm going to end with this story. So I'm one of 6 kids, which also led to me feeling like I wasn't seen. And then my sister has severe disabilities, like mega disabilities, and she's great. But you know, when she was little, we didn't know if she's gonna walk. We didn't know nothing. Like I grew up, like for breakfast we would have like fish and I remember like goat's milk. Yeah, goat's milk. Like I was just like we were eating all sorts of crazy stuff. So she just has she has a disability that we now know called P136. That's what it's called. So the tip of one of her chromosomes never got formed, and that's a pretty important tip. And if you Google it, the kids are like really a mess that have this condition. But my sister, she's got a. So I want you guys to picture Kim is. I think she's 5 years old. Okay, and we're at my grandparents' pool. My grandparents were a place of shalom for me, right? They were the people that loved me. A lot of people love me. My grandparents really loved me. And when I was there, we were just treated so well. And they had a great big pool, and we were done swimming, and we were all in the family room. And I think my papa was getting ready to sleep and wanted us all to be quiet or something like that. And we were all in there, and Kim was in there. And Kim is now approaching like 5 years old. And from one end of the room to the next end of the room, she walks right in front of us. She's never walked before. She walks right across the room. Now, what do you guys think we did? We're all in there. We're all tired. And Kim, in front of all of us, walks. What do you think we did? What? Scream and shout. Yeah, what do you think my parents did? Yeah, I mean, they think their daughter is going to be in a wheelchair, right? And she just took her own steps in front of everybody. Do you think anybody got up and lectured Kim that she's about 3.5 years late? Do you think, oh, Kim, this was good, but, it's a little late. Most kids are pretty far ahead of you, like, you got a lot, let's go outside. We have some jumping jacks to learn. Like, what do you think anybody talked like that? No, why? We went nuts. We exploded. Like, we're like, whoa, my gosh, Kim walked. Right? So what do you think heaven does when you guys say no one night? What do you think? What do you think when one night turns into 2? Oh my gosh, what do you think when 2 turns into a month? And you know this? You know where I acted out the most? Every morning in the shower. Because I hated myself. And you know where I meet God the most? In the shower. Every morning. Every morning. I want to make like a waterproof whiteboard because I get my best thoughts in there. So Jesus turns everything upside down. All right? Let me close in prayer. Thanks, guys. You were great listeners. Jesus, thank you for everybody here tonight. I thank you for my story. I thank you for their story. I thank you that, man, there's just so much to unpack from in here. I pray that no matter where we are in the stages of change, I pray that you'd meet us there. I pray that we would get to a place where we're different and we can look back and see this transformation. I pray that when we mess up, you would give us the courage to reach out to people that love you and to look you, Lord Jesus, in the eye and say, I'm sorry. And Jesus, I pray that just as courageous as that is, that we would have the courage to let you say back to us how much you love us. And I pray that we would begin to believe it. And I pray that that belief would then transform us into becoming people who are become more and more unafraid to out ourselves when we're hurting, when we long for something that we know we shouldn't be doing. And Jesus, I pray that this church, the church is dying. The church is hurting. And there's so many broken people in the church. And I pray that the church would be reborn through people who can stand up and say, no more. And we can be changed from the very core of who we are. And we could be the leaders of the church. In your name I pray. Amen.